Naomi, I'm here. Don't worry about anything. The voice of a man who had become familiar in my life lately gently reassured me. After losing faith in everything around me, I had slowly given up after being kidnapped and brought to this place. But when I heard those words from the older husband I had been forced to marry, my heart twisted in pain and tears would not stop falling. Not because someone had come to save me, but because it was the one person I never imagined would be the one to save me, the man I had treated so poorly during all this time. "Do you really have to do this?" Dylan asked calmly, both hands still tucked into his pockets as he stared out at the distant waves rolling across the Pacific Ocean. I remained silent. Dylan seemed to understand. He let out a soft sigh, and neither of us said another word. Only the sound of the waves continued to crash gently against the white sand. Dylan and I were each other's first love. We had been together for 3 years and had already introduced each other to our families. We both had stable jobs, and neither side of the family objected to our relationship. In fact, everyone supported the idea of us getting married someday. But life always finds a way to throw unexpected tragedies at people. And my younger sister became obsessed with keeping up appearances after falling in with the wrong crowd. She even took the deed to our family's land and used it as collateral for a loan from dangerous criminals. When she could no longer keep up with the interest payments, the debt collectors started showing up at our house, causing chaos. That was when the truth finally came out. Dylan and I both came from ordinary families in Cedar Ridge, Texas. Our parents had spent their entire lives running small businesses just to give us a proper education. The debt my sister had created was so enormous that even if both of our families sold everything we owned, it still would not be enough. When my parents learned the truth, they were devastated. My father spent every day pacing around the house with a heavy expression while my mother cried constantly. I tried borrowing money everywhere I could. Dylan helped me contact every possible lender as well, but it barely made a difference. Just when we had no idea what to do, Marcus Langston, one of my father's closest friends, came to our house after hearing what had happened. Marcus offered to help pay off the debt and told my father that we could repay him whenever we were able to. In the end, my family was saved. My sister swore she would never make the same mistake again. My parents and I promised that we would work hard and repay every cent. Then one weekend morning, before I had even gotten out of bed, I heard loud commotion coming from outside. When I stepped into the yard, I saw several luxury black SUVs parked in front of the house. Several men in formal suits stood outside, carrying luxury gift baskets and family gifts. It looked exactly like a formal marriage proposal. I saw Marcus sitting across from my father on the old wooden porch furniture. I had no idea what Marcus was saying, but my father's expression was unusually tense. After Marcus left, my father fell back into the same state he had been in before the debt was paid. He spent the entire day walking back and forth, letting out heavy sighs every few minutes. I asked him what was wrong, but he kept saying everything was fine. I knew he was hiding something from me. Eventually, one day, my father finally told me the truth. Marcus had not paid off our family's debt without a reason. He wanted to marry me. I never imagined something like that could happen. Marcus was my father's friend, and only 5 years younger than him, which meant he was nearly twice my age. He had never been married. I didn't know exactly how wealthy he was, but from everything my father had told me, and from the memories I had of him growing up, Marcus had always been an extremely rich man. My father said he didn't know why Marcus had made such a request, but he believed Marcus was sincere. Over the years, Marcus had helped our family countless times, not just with the enormous debt. My father said this was the first thing Marcus had ever asked for in return, and he had asked very seriously. After thinking about it for a long time, my father had agreed. I refused immediately. I already had Dylan. We both had stable jobs and were planning to get married soon. Why would I leave the man I loved to marry someone almost twice my age? Even if it meant carrying that debt for the rest of my life, I would rather work and pay it back myself. But the man I had respected for years, my father's closest friend, used the cruelest possible way to get what he wanted. I still remember that morning. I woke up in a hotel room without a single piece of clothing on my body. Marcus was already dressed and sitting by the window smoking a cigarette. I wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Marcus pulled me into his arms and tried to comfort me. He told me that from now on he would protect me for the rest of my life. I couldn't bring myself to tell anyone what had happened. I felt like I no longer deserved Dylan, so I broke up with him. I told him I didn't want to live a poor life anymore. I told him Marcus could give me everything, and Dylan accepted it. A wedding is supposed to be a joyful occasion, but nobody in my family smiled that day. People around town whispered behind my back, saying I had abandoned a good man for money. I silently accepted every accusation. There were times when I thought about ending my life, but then I thought about my aging parents. I couldn't bear the thought of making them bury their own daughter. My younger sister would get married someday and build her own life. Could she really take care of our parents when they were old? After the wedding, Marcus took me to Hawaii for our honeymoon. The first night, I told him I was exhausted from the wedding and the long flight and wanted to go to bed early. Marcus didn't say anything. He simply stepped outside and smoked alone. Even though that incident had already happened between us, I still shuddered whenever I thought about it. People say you can avoid something for one day, but you can't avoid it forever. I kept using the excuse of being tired until the third day. Finally, Marcus said, "You don't have to do this. If you don't want to, I won't force you. You already forced me into this marriage," I muttered under my breath. I thought he hadn't heard me, but he let out a long sigh before saying, "Stop calling me Mr. Langston. Married couples don't talk like that." Then he grabbed his jacket and walked out. I didn't know what to say. I stayed silent and eventually drifted off to sleep. The next morning, Marcus didn't return until after I was already awake. "I'm tired today," he said. "Go wherever you want and have fun." Then he collapsed onto the bed and immediately fell asleep. I was surprised. I had expected him to keep pressuring me or try to force me to submit the same way he had forced me into this marriage. Looking at the man sleeping soundly in front of me, I suddenly felt strangely conflicted. I quickly pushed those thoughts away, changed clothes, and went out by myself. The place where we were spending our honeymoon was a beautiful coastal city in Hawaii. Our resort sat on a small island just off the shore. I wandered around the island alone, watching tourists pass by and observing the carefree lives of the people there. Suddenly, a bicycle came speeding straight toward me and knocked me to the ground. "Are you okay?" A tall young man rushed over and helped me up. A sharp pain shot through my ankle. The collision had twisted it badly. The young man helped me sit down on a nearby stone bench and gently examined my ankle. After rubbing and adjusting it for a while, the pain eased considerably. Only then did I finally notice the culprit. A young boy stood beside the bicycle with a pale face, looking absolutely terrified. I'm sorry, ma'am," he stammered. Looking at his frightened expression, I couldn't help laughing. "It's okay. Are you hurt?" The boy shook his head so hard that his sweat-soaked hair bounced around. "No, ma'am. Do you need to go to the hospital? But this is all the money I have." Nervously, he pulled a few crumpled dollar bills from his pocket and held them out toward me with trembling hands. The young man and I both burst out laughing. "I'm fine. Just be more careful next time, okay?" The boy's face instantly relaxed. He politely apologized again before climbing back onto his bike and riding away. I turned back to the young man standing beside me. He had slightly tanned skin, a strong athletic build, and remarkably bright eyes. "Thank you for helping me," I said. Seeing me continue staring at him, he straightened up and shook his head as if it were nothing. Then he smiled. "My name is Andre Kensington. It's nice to meet you." "My name is Naomi Holloway. Thank you again, Andre." That was how we became acquainted. I never imagined fate still had many surprises waiting for me ahead. It turned out Andre lived in the same city as I did. He was also vacationing in Hawaii. When he found out I was newly married, he congratulated me. We got along incredibly well. We shared many of the same interests. We both loved reading books, eating ice cream in winter, and buying roasted corn from roadside vendors. We sat there talking endlessly about all kinds of things until Marcus called and told me to come back for dinner. Only then did Andre, and I realized how late it had become. After our honeymoon, Marcus brought me back to his home. Calling it a house wasn't exactly accurate. It was a massive mansion located inside an exclusive gated community. My family had been poor all my life. I had never seen a place this luxurious in person before, much less imagined I would one day live in a place like this. "Do you live here alone?" I asked curiously when I noticed how quiet the house seemed. Marcus immediately called out loudly, "Ruth Victor." As soon as he finished speaking, a woman and a man, both around 40 years old, hurried out. "You're back, sir," the woman said cheerfully before looking at me with surprise. "Is this Naomi?" I wasn't surprised. Marcus had probably told them about me beforehand. Marcus nodded and introduced us. "This is Ruth. She's technically the housekeeper, but she's been here for decades. She's basically family." I smiled politely and greeted her. Marcus then turned toward the man. "And this is Victor. He's the estate manager, driver, and handles anything heavy around the house. If you ever need anything, just ask him." I nodded and greeted him as well. My room was on the second floor and furnished beautifully. I had no idea what Marcus actually did for a living, besides being some kind of executive. Marcus suggested I quit my job and stay home, because he could provide everything I needed. But I felt that no matter what happened, I should still have my own job. It would keep me busy and stop me from sitting around overthinking everything. Ruth and Victor took care of all the household chores. Occasionally, if I had free time, I would go into the kitchen to help Ruth. Whenever I did, she became very happy and would tell me stories about Marcus when he was younger. According to her, Marcus had dated a few women over the years, but none of those relationships ever lasted. Eventually, he lost interest in romance and focused entirely on work. The family business had been passed down to him by his parents. But after they passed away, Marcus took over because he was their only child. He became quieter over time and stopped talking about marriage altogether. Then one day, he suddenly announced that he planned to marry a woman 17 years younger than him. Everyone was happy that he had finally decided to get married, even though the age gap was considerable. "To be honest," Ruth said, "I was worried Marcus might get tricked." Nowadays, when a young woman agrees to marry a man more than 20 years older than her, most people assume it's because of money. But when Marcus told me you were the daughter of a very close family friend and that he had known you since you were young, I felt much better. Then when I saw you arrive here without fancy clothes or expensive jewelry, I knew you weren't that kind of person. I quietly listened. Her concerns made sense, but she had no idea that Marcus was the one who had forced this marriage in the first place. Ruth gently took my hand. "I don't know why the two of you got married, but now that you are husband and wife, you should learn to care for each other. Marcus has suffered enough already." I didn't say anything. I was confused. Marcus was an only child who had inherited a fortune, and what hardship could he possibly have endured? The gated community where Marcus lived was incredibly peaceful. There were parks filled with trees, playgrounds for children, a gym, restaurants, and even a movie theater. It felt like a small city of its own. One weekend, Marcus noticed that I had been staying inside the house all day and suggested, "How about I show you around the neighborhood?" "No, thank you," I quickly refused. Even though we had been married for 2 months, I still wasn't used to having Marcus in my life. I still slept with a pillow placed between us every night. When he heard me reject his offer without hesitation, he didn't say anything else. He simply went downstairs and asked Ruth to prepare lunch. Later that afternoon, I felt restless and decided to get some fresh air. There was a small table and chair set near the fence overlooking the street. I sat there enjoying a freshly brewed cup of tea. Marcus and Victor had gone out, and Ruth was busy working in the backyard. "Naomi?" Suddenly I heard someone call my name. I turned around. It was Andre. Andre looked just as surprised as I was before breaking into a bright smile. "What a coincidence," I said as I stood up. Andre was dressed in athletic clothes with headphones around his neck. His hair was damp with sweat as though he had just finished exercising. "Do you live around here?" I asked. Andre nodded. "Yeah, I didn't expect you to live in this neighborhood too." He invited me to take a walk with him, and I agreed. We walked along a quiet path beside the park and talked happily about all kinds of things. It turned out Andre not only lived in the same city, but also in the same neighborhood. His house was only a few homes away from mine. Andre didn't know Marcus. He said everyone in this community mostly kept to themselves. Even neighbors living only a few houses apart rarely spoke to each other. While we were talking, dark clouds suddenly rolled in and heavy rain began to fall. Andre quickly pulled me beneath a small awning. Rainwater still splashed inside. Seeing me getting wet, Andre stepped in front of me to shield me. But the awning was so small that we were forced to stand very close together. Only then did I realize how close we really were. I could hear my own heart pounding. I could feel his breath above me. If I lifted my head even slightly, our lips would touch. In a movie, This would have been the moment for a romantic kiss. But this was real life. I hurriedly pushed Andre away, muttered an apology, and ran all the way home. I was already married. Even if I didn't love my husband, I shouldn't be forming relationships that cross the line. That night, after being caught in the rain, I developed a fever. I lay trembling beneath the blankets. My body felt freezing cold, while my forehead burned with heat. When Marcus saw my condition, his expression immediately filled with concern. He covered me with more blankets and repeatedly changed the cold compress on my forehead. "Let me take you to the hospital," he said. "No, I don't need a hospital." I used the little strength I had left to shake my head. Ever since I was a child, I had hated hospitals. I hated the smell of disinfectant. I hated the cold white walls. Seeing how miserable I looked while still refusing to go, Marcus finally gave up. "Then I'll call the family doctor." I didn't answer. The fever left me dizzy and exhausted. A short time later, the doctor arrived, prescribed medicine, and started an IV. As the fever gradually subsided, I began feeling much better. Even while drifting in and out of sleep, I could still hear Marcus anxiously asking the doctor about my condition. Only after the doctor assured him that I would be fine did Marcus finally let out a long breath of relief. He thanked the doctor repeatedly and personally escorted him out. When I woke up the next morning, my body still felt sore, and my head was slightly dizzy. Marcus was sitting beside my bed, with his head resting against the mattress, fast asleep while holding my hand. It looked like he had stayed awake all night taking care of me. I stared at his tired but still handsome face. For some reason, I found myself thinking that he must have been incredibly handsome when he was younger. A strange feeling of sympathy rose inside me. I carefully tried to pull my hand away, but the movement woke him up. "You're awake?" Marcus immediately sat up. "Do you still feel sick?" He reached out and placed his hand against my forehead. When he realized my fever had broken, he smiled. "How about some soup? I'll ask Ruth to bring some up." Then he stood and headed downstairs. A few minutes later, Marcus returned, carrying a steaming bowl of porridge, and he gently blew on each spoonful before bringing it toward me. I shook my head and reached for the bowl. "It's okay. I can feed myself." Marcus frowned and refused to let go. "Let me do it." I tried once more to take the bowl from him, but he remained stubborn. In the end, I gave up. Watching him carefully cool every spoonful before feeding me, I suddenly felt an unfamiliar warmth inside my chest. Other than my parents, not even my ex-boyfriend had ever treated me with such patience and care. That evening, Marcus had to go out for work. Before leaving, he instructed Ruth to prepare homemade chicken soup for me and even asked her to make an extra bowl in case I got hungry during the night. He told her to check on me regularly and immediately call him if my fever returned. I heard everything, but I kept my eyes closed and pretended to be asleep. I still wasn't ready to accept this husband. Late that night, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was Andre. "Are you free? Come down to the gate for a minute." Why would Andre want to see me at this hour? Curious, I threw on a jacket and quietly went downstairs. Ruth was busy cleaning in the back and didn't notice me leave. Andre looked concerned the moment he saw me. "Are you sick?" "I'm okay. I'm sorry. I took you out and you got caught in the rain because of me." I shook my head. "It's not your fault. Did you need something?" I asked. "Not really. I didn't see you outside all day. I wanted to go for a walk with you. But if you're sick, forget it." Andre looked genuinely disappointed. "I didn't want to stay out any longer. I'm going back inside." "Okay. Don't catch another cold." I was about to leave when Andre suddenly remembered something. "Oh, by the way, I'll bring you some books tomorrow. I have a few really good ones." I smiled and nodded. Then I said goodbye and went back inside. The next day, Andre really did bring the books. They were exactly the titles I had been searching for a long time. I thanked him and told him I would return them in a week. Andre laughed. "No rush. Keep them as long as you want." Then he added, "But you have to eat this too." From behind his back, he produced 2 ears of freshly roasted corn that were still steaming. I couldn't help laughing. Andre laughed awkwardly as well. He really was an interesting guy. Over the next few days, I buried myself in those books. Because of my illness, Marcus had arranged for me to take time off work. He remained busy with his own work, but he never stopped looking after me. Every day, he reminded Ruth to prepare nutritious meals for me. Every time he came home, he brought me something. Sometimes it was a bag of roasted chestnuts. Sometimes it was a comic book. I couldn't help staring at him in confusion. You treat me like a child, Marcus smiled. Someone who eats roasted corn, sleeps until noon, and gets excited over comic books at 25 years old still counts as a child. I was stunned. Apparently, this older man knew how to tease people too. Ruth and Victor immediately joined in and laughed at me. Little by little, the distance between Marcus and me began to shrink. One evening, under a clear autumn sky, I sat outside drinking tea while waiting for Marcus to come home. Victor was watering the plants and Ruth was cleaning the kitchen. The weather had turned cool, and the falling leaves made everything look peaceful. I was quietly enjoying the warm cup in my hands when I saw Marcus's car pull into the driveway. Normally, he would walk straight into the house, but this time he went around to the passenger side. Only then did I realize someone else was in the car. Marcus helped a heavily intoxicated woman out of the vehicle while calling loudly for Ruth. Ruth rushed outside. The moment she saw the woman, she froze for 2 seconds and secretly glanced in my direction. I didn't understand the meaning behind that look, but seeing Marcus struggling to support the drunk woman, I didn't think much of it. Together, Ruth, Marcus, and I helped her upstairs. Once she was settled into bed, I finally had the chance to look at her properly. She appeared to be in her early 30s and was still very beautiful. Even while asleep, she carried herself with an air of elegance and sophistication. I had no idea who she was, but whoever she was, I knew it wasn't my place to pry. I returned to my room. A few moments later, Marcus came in behind me. "She's an old friend," he said quietly. Then he turned away. "An old friend?" I repeated to myself. Whether she was an old friend, an old lover, or something else entirely, I didn't feel I had the right to ask. Even though I was his wife, our marriage existed mostly in name. Still, for some reason, I couldn't stop thinking about the beautiful woman sleeping downstairs. "Are you free tonight?" Andre asked. "Why?" "Tonight is my birthday." Andre's face suddenly turned red. He scratched the back of his head awkwardly. "Would you come?" He was inviting me to his birthday party. Technically, Andre was the first friend I had made here. He had helped me before, and I had no reason to refuse. That evening, I told Marcus that I already had plans with a friend and wouldn't be home for dinner. He didn't ask many questions. He only asked whether I needed him to drive me. I said no. Then he told me to call if I needed a ride home. I nodded and headed out. Even a fool could guess that certain people in that house probably wanted me out of the way, but whatever they wanted to do was their business. As long as it didn't affect my life and didn't reach my parents' ears, I didn't care. I didn't want them worrying about me anymore. The party was held at a small cafe. Calling it a party was almost an exaggeration. There were only a handful of people there. Andre said they were all close friends he had known for years and told me not to feel nervous. We sang Happy Birthday, watched him make a wish and blow out the candles, then spent the evening chatting and laughing together. After everyone had relaxed a little, some of Andre's friends asked how we had met. I honestly told them about the bicycle accident on the island and how Andre had helped me afterward. They looked genuinely surprised. One of them laughed and said, "This guy has always been arrogant and impossible to approach. He never starts conversations with strangers." "We've known him for years and it still took forever to get him to open up," another friend immediately added. "Exactly. That's why he's still never had a real relationship. If you don't mind him, please take him off our hands. We're tired of looking at his face." I glanced at Andre and saw his ears turning red. "Stop it," he muttered awkwardly. "Just drink." Everyone burst out laughing and moved on to another topic. Late that night, Andre walked me home. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" I asked. "For coming to my birthday party. I was really happy today." I smiled. Friends go to each other's birthdays. That's normal. Andre looked as though he wanted to say something else, but we had already reached my house. I said goodbye and went inside. Vanessa continued living at the mansion for another month. Marcus never said anything about it, and neither did I. Everyone simply went about their own lives. Occasionally, I would catch Marcus entering Vanessa's room in the middle of the night. I knew about it, but I never said a word. Whatever happened between them was their business. Marrying Marcus had already repaid the debt of gratitude my family owed him. If he wanted to continue loving Vanessa while keeping me in the house to play the role of a wife, that was fine too. The money he had spent saving my family had been enormous. If I had to spend the rest of my life as a wife, in name only, perhaps that was a fair price to pay. One evening, I was sitting upstairs drinking tea. Marcus had gone out with Victor, leaving only Vanessa and Ruth downstairs. Suddenly, there was a loud crash. I immediately ran downstairs. Vanessa was sitting on the floor with a pained expression on her face. A pot of hot soup had spilled everywhere beside her, steam rising into the air. I hurried over to help her up and called for Ruth. But before we could do anything, Vanessa slapped my hand away and deliberately dropped herself back onto the floor with a scream. At that exact moment, Marcus returned home. Ruth came running in from the garden. The second Vanessa saw Marcus, she put on an aggrieved expression. "I'm fine," she said weakly. "It was my fault. Naomi had nothing to do with it." Marcus immediately helped her upstairs. As they passed me, Vanessa threw me a strange look. For some reason, I suddenly felt as though I were trapped in some ridiculous soap opera, framed by the scheming mistress while the husband rushed to comfort the other woman. After the family doctor finished treating Vanessa's burn and left, Marcus returned to her room. I wasn't sure whether I should check on her, but eventually I decided I should. Vanessa was lying in bed looking miserable. One hand was wrapped in bandages, while her other hand was holding Marcus's. The moment Marcus saw me, he quickly pulled his hand away and cleared his throat awkwardly. I politely asked how Vanessa was feeling, then excused myself and said it was late. A short while later, Marcus came upstairs. Seeing me calmly reading a book, he sat beside me and slowly began explaining. Since everyone seemed determined to perform, it would have been a shame not to watch the show. Marcus and Vanessa really had been former lovers. She was the woman he had once been willing to defy his parents in order to marry. But just before the wedding, Vanessa received an opportunity that could completely change her career. The only condition was that she had to leave the country for 3 years. They argued because the wedding date was only days away. Marcus told her she could leave after the wedding. Vanessa refused. In the end, there was no wedding at all. Years later, they met again by chance. Vanessa told him she still loved him, but according to Marcus, she was nothing more than someone he had once loved. Vanessa said she traveled constantly for performances and didn't own a permanent home in the city. Marcus was the only person she knew well enough to ask for help, so she asked if she could keep a room at the mansion and stay there whenever she returned. I listened quietly. If Marcus told this story to anyone else, even a 3-year-old child probably wouldn't believe it. A sarcastic laugh escaped me. The moment Marcus saw my expression, he became flustered. "There is really nothing between Vanessa and me." "Nothing?" I replied. "Nothing, but her name is saved in your phone with a heart next to it. Nothing, but you visit her room in the middle of the night. Nothing, but I keep seeing the two of you together." I didn't want to hear any more. "Whatever the two of you do is your business. Just don't let my parents find out." Marcus looked as though he wanted to continue explaining, but I told him I was tired and wanted to sleep. Neither of us said another word. Vanessa continued living at the mansion. The elegant, sophisticated woman I had seen on her first day slowly disappeared. In her place was someone I found unbearable. She spent all day wandering around the house, acting delicate and seductive whenever Marcus was nearby. I noticed everything, but I refused to say anything. Then one evening after work, I walked into my bedroom and froze. A used condom was lying openly beside my bed. The sheets were a complete mess, as though a battle had taken place there. That was the moment I realized everything had crossed the line. I was exhausted with that house, exhausted with that marriage, and exhausted with pretending none of it mattered. Just when I felt I could no longer stand staying there, Andre sent me a message. He invited me to spend the day outside the city. I had no desire to stay home acting like an unwanted third wheel, so I agreed immediately. Andre drove us to the coast. It had been a long time since I had felt the ocean wind against my face, or listened to the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore. We spent the entire day enjoying ourselves like children. We walked along the beach, laughed, and played together. Then suddenly, Andre held out his hand toward me. I hesitated for a moment, but then convinced myself that friends could hold hands too. Andre took my hand and pulled me forward. We ran together across the sand toward the ocean. As evening approached, the sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon. We sat side by side watching the sunset. "Naomi," Andre said quietly, I don't know if you've noticed, but you're very special to me. I turned toward him. His eyes looked deeper than I had ever seen before beneath the golden light of the setting sun. Andre continued speaking without looking at me. Sometimes I wish I had met you sooner. I wish you hadn't gotten married. Only then did I realize there was another meaning hidden beneath his words. I pressed my lips together, afraid I might say something I shouldn't. Andre finally turned toward me, his gaze locked onto mine. Slowly, he leaned closer. The distance between us disappeared. The waves continued rolling onto the shore. Just as Andre was about to kiss me, I suddenly remembered the invisible barrier between us. I turned my face away. It's getting late. We should go home. I stood up immediately. By the time Andre and I returned to the neighborhood, it was already late. The car stopped a short distance away from the gate because I didn't want Marcus to see us together. Even though I hadn't done anything wrong, I still felt it was better this way. Thank you, Andre, for today. It was nothing, Andre replied with a smile. If you enjoyed it, next time I'll take you to Maui. Before Andre could finish speaking, a voice interrupted us. Naomi. Marcus was standing there. Vanessa was beside him. I had never seen Marcus look so angry before. He stormed toward us and grabbed my wrist, pulling me away without saying another word. The pain shot through my arm immediately. Andre saw what was happening and grabbed my other wrist. Marcus turned around and glared at him. Let go. His voice was low and dangerous, but Andre didn't back down. His hand remained tightly around my wrist. You're hurting her. Before Andre could finish his sentence, Marcus threw a punch directly into his face. Even though Marcus was already in his 40s, his strength was no less than Andre's. Andre immediately moved as though he wanted to hit him back. Terrified, I rushed between them. Andre's fist stopped inches from my face. If I hadn't stepped in, it would have landed directly on Marcus. I quickly pushed Marcus away and repeatedly apologized to Andre. The moment Marcus saw me defending him, his expression darkened even more. Without another word, he grabbed me and dragged me away. As we passed Vanessa, I noticed the worried expression she was pretending to wear, but the corners of her lips were secretly curling upward in satisfaction. Ruth and Victor watched everything happen, but neither of them dared step forward. The moment we entered the bedroom, Marcus threw me onto the bed. The door slammed shut behind us. Then I heard the lock click. His eyes were bloodshot. But beneath the anger, there was something else. Something that looked almost like helplessness. Where did you go with him? I rubbed my wrist, which was burning red where Marcus had been gripping it. I didn't want to answer. Marcus grabbed my shoulders and shouted, Answer me! Where did you go with him? We went to the beach. I pushed his hands away and replied calmly, I can't breathe in that house anymore. Marcus froze. His fists tightened at his sides. Am I controlling you? Am I imprisoning you? Have I forbidden you from doing anything? Maybe not, I said, but it feels exactly the same. Marcus stared at me in shock. I continued before he could respond. You brought your ex-girlfriend into our house just to humiliate me. Was I supposed to stay there and watch the two of you flirt every day? Andre and I have nothing to do with each other. Marcus immediately shook his head. Vanessa and I don't have anything going on. I laughed coldly. That sounds very believable. Whatever the two of you do is your business. But did you really have to do it in my room? Marcus blinked. What are you talking about? Don't pretend you don't know. The used condom. The mess on my bed. Was humiliating me really that entertaining? For the first time, Marcus genuinely looked confused. But I was already convinced I knew the truth. Before Marcus could explain, I walked to the closet and pulled out a suitcase. What are you doing? Packing. Packing. For what? I'm going back to my parents' house. Marcus immediately slammed the closet door shut. You're not going anywhere. Why not? I shot back. Because I'll handle this. Handle it how? I asked. By sending Vanessa away? Marcus looked exactly like a man whose thoughts had just been exposed. A bitter smile crossed my lips. Don't bother. Vanessa isn't the real problem. The problem is that there was never any love between us. What? Who told you that? Marcus almost shouted. We're husband and wife. For a brief second, I was stunned by how emotional he sounded. Then I forced myself to stay calm. Did you forget? I asked quietly. Who took my virginity? Who forced me into this marriage? Did I ever choose any of this? Marcus fell silent. Something inside his eyes seemed to shatter. After a long moment, he finally spoke. So that's still how you see me? I didn't answer. Marcus slowly stepped away from the closet. Then go stay with your parents for a few days. He stood there, gripping the closet door while I packed. When I finished and carried my suitcase toward the door, I saw him sitting motionless on the edge of the bed. For a brief moment, I felt guilty. But I forced myself not to show it. I'm leaving. Marcus didn't respond. The moment I opened the bedroom door, Vanessa was already standing outside. The second she saw me carrying a suitcase, she rushed into the room. I had no interest in hearing whatever they wanted to say. I simply walked downstairs. Ruth saw me carrying my suitcase downstairs and immediately asked, "It's late. Where are you going?" "I'm going to stay with my parents for a few days," I replied. Victor suddenly said, "The car is already ready." I looked at him in surprise. Mr. Langston instructed us earlier. Without thinking, I looked up toward the second-floor bedroom. Then I picked up my suitcase and walked outside. My parents were shocked when they saw me arrive in the middle of the night. I told them that renovations were being done next door to Marcus's property and that he had suggested I stay with them for a few days because of the noise and dust. My father simply sighed and went inside. My mother looked close to tears and asked whether I had eaten. I told her I wasn't hungry and carried my luggage to my room. The next day, I went to work as usual. That night, when I returned home, I found my father sitting alone in the yard staring up at the moon. He looked unusually thoughtful. I walked over and sat beside him. "Enjoying the moon tonight, too?" I joked. My father patted the seat beside him. We sat in silence for a long time before he finally spoke. "Your marriage to Marcus wasn't because he pressured me, and it wasn't because he tricked you. Back then, when Marcus came with the engagement gifts, it wasn't because of the debt. It wasn't because he wanted to exchange money for your hand in marriage. He genuinely loved you. At first, he cared about you like a family friend would. But as you grew older, he realized his feelings had changed. The age difference frightened him, so he never said anything. Then he learned that you and Dylan were in love, and he quietly wished you happiness. But when the debt situation happened, he discovered the truth. Dylan had been behind everything. He never loved you. His plan was to gain your trust and eventually traffic both you and your sister into a human trafficking ring. He started by dating you, but because you always protected yourself and never crossed certain boundaries with him, he never got the opportunity he wanted. Then, he noticed your younger sister. Since the original plan wasn't working, he encouraged her reckless behavior and pushed her into massive debt. The idea was simple. Once the debt became impossible to repay, he would force both sisters into a situation where they would have to repay it with themselves. Everything was progressing exactly as he intended, until Marcus intervened. Marcus paid off the debt. He was afraid you would become another victim, so he decided to marry you himself. He used the debt as an excuse to separate you from Dylan. Marcus truly loves you. My father continued quietly. Yes, the age difference worried me at first. When he asked for permission to marry you, I didn't agree immediately. But because our family owed him so much, I asked you to think about it. I never expected you to accept. My father lowered his head. Later, Dylan was arrested for doing the same thing to another young woman. That's when I knew letting you marry Marcus had been the right choice. I sat there in silence. In my father's eyes, Marcus seemed almost perfect. Did he really not know what Marcus had done to me? "Dad, do you know how Marcus got me to marry him?" I asked. "I know." I stared at him in disbelief. "You know?" After the wedding, Marcus told me everything. I felt as though I had been struck across the face. "And you still said nothing?" My father sighed heavily. "Marcus said it was the only way he could protect you." Protect me. The word sounded ridiculous. Protect me by drugging me. Protect me by taking me to a hotel room. Protect me by making sure there was no way back. Protect me by turning me into his wife. Protect me while bringing another woman into our home and letting her humiliate me every day. I didn't want to hear another word. Anger burned inside me. I went straight back to my room. The next morning, I told my parents I was returning home to collect some things. Instead, I booked a flight to Maui. That same day, Andre called. His voice was gentle. He asked where I was. He asked whether Marcus had done anything to me. I told him everything. Andre listened quietly before saying, "Why don't you come to Maui for a while? My family owns a resort there. I don't know why I agreed so quickly. Maybe I was exhausted by my marriage. Maybe I was heartbroken by what my parents believed. Or maybe I simply wanted to escape from everything. Maui was beautiful. The sky was clear. The ocean was blue. And the white sand stretched endlessly along the shore. It felt as though nothing in the world cared about the exhaustion and disappointment I carried inside me. Andre took me everywhere. We rode speedboats, went scuba diving to admire coral reefs, and even tried parasailing. I had always been afraid of heights, but when Andre and I were suspended beneath the parachute, drifting with the wind above the ocean, I felt freer than I ever had before. For one brief moment, I truly believed Andre was my soulmate. On our third day in Maui, Andre told me to go upstairs and take a shower before dinner. "I'm going to prepare something first," he said mysteriously. I asked what he was planning, but he refused to tell me. After I finished getting ready, there was still plenty of time before we were supposed to meet. My curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to know what Andre was doing that required so much secrecy. So, I left my room early. Near the elevators in the hotel lobby, I spotted Andre walking away. I called out to him, but he didn't seem to hear me. He stepped into a glass elevator and disappeared upward. I watched the display stop on the third floor. Without thinking, I took the next elevator and followed him. When the doors opened, I froze. The entire floor had been transformed. White and purple balloons filled the space. Fresh flowers were everywhere. In the center stood an elegantly decorated dining table, illuminated by dozens of candles. I unconsciously walked toward it. The entire atmosphere felt overwhelmingly romantic. For a moment, I was completely lost in the beauty of it all. Then I heard voices. "Is everything ready?" It was Andre. He sounded as though he was talking to hotel staff. "That girl will be here soon. Make sure everything goes perfectly. If we still can't catch her this time, you'll all regret it." Catch her? My heart skipped a beat. Who was Andre talking about? I instinctively took a step backward. Pop! A balloon suddenly burst beneath my heel. The sound echoed through the room. Andre immediately turned toward me. For a second, neither of us moved. My throat felt painfully dry. I swallowed hard before finally forcing out a few words. "Andre, but the expression on his face had already changed. He understood immediately. He knew I had heard everything. A cold smile slowly spread across Andre's face. Then he snapped his fingers. Almost instantly, several men dressed in black emerged from every direction and rushed toward me. A black cloth was immediately thrown over my head. I had no idea why I was being kidnapped. All I knew was that I was shoved into a vehicle. 2 men sat on either side of me, gripping my arms tightly. Even though my mouth had already been stuffed with a rag and my body was securely tied up, they still refused to loosen their hold. The car drove for about an hour. Outside, I could hear the sound of wind howling across open fields. It seemed they had taken me far outside the city. Then Andre made a phone call. "Hello, Marcus. Your beloved wife Naomi is in my hands." Andre burst into laughter. It was a laugh I never imagined I would hear from the kind, thoughtful man I thought I knew. I couldn't hear what Marcus was saying on the other end, but it clearly wasn't pleasant. Andre stopped laughing. His voice turned cold. "If you want to save her, come alone tomorrow." Then he hung up. What exactly did Andre want from Marcus? Why kidnap me to force Marcus into something? Eventually, the vehicle stopped somewhere isolated. I couldn't hear anything except the people around me. The 2 men escorted me upstairs and locked me inside a room. Throughout the entire night, I couldn't stop thinking. What kind of grudge could Andre possibly have against Marcus? Marcus had met Andre before. He had only seemed jealous when he saw me with him. He had never mentioned anything about old enemies or revenge. Eventually, exhaustion overcame me and I fell asleep. When is that old man getting here? Probably soon. Once he arrives, remember to watch the back entrance. Be careful. He's stronger than he looks. Voices woke me from my sleep. I wasn't sure whether it was already morning. I was still tied up in a dark corner of the room with the rag stuffed in my mouth. A little sunlight slipped through cracks in the walls. I struggled into a sitting position. Moments later, the door opened. The sudden brightness made me squint. A figure stepped inside. It was Andre. Several rough-looking men covered in tattoos followed behind him. Andre sat down in a chair nearby and smiled coldly. Still don't understand what you did wrong? I stared at him in silence. You'll understand once that old man gets here. I ignored him. For all I knew, Marcus was probably busy spending time with Vanessa. Why would he come all the way here for me? This entire kidnapping felt pointless. A short while later, I heard the sound of a vehicle outside. Could Marcus really be here? One of the men ran outside to check. Moments later, the door opened again. Marcus walked in. Marcus actually came. He really came to save me. Suddenly, my nose stung. I quickly lowered my head because I was afraid I would start crying. But the tears came anyway. Marcus saw me and immediately tried to move toward me. Andre stepped in front of him. What's the rush? Andre laughed. She's just a toy. The moment Marcus heard that, he grabbed Andre by the collar and lifted him off the ground. What did you say? The tattooed men immediately moved forward, but Andre signaled for them to stay back. Still grinning, Andre pulled Marcus's hand away from his collar. Calm down. Marcus narrowed his eyes and looked at him carefully. Who are you? Andre suddenly burst into laughter. Of course you don't remember. Then his voice turned cold. But I could never forget. Only then did Marcus seem to remember something. His expression changed slightly. Richard, he muttered. Then he stared at Andre with disbelief. You're Richard Hayes' son? Andre straightened his clothes and smoothed the collar Marcus had just wrinkled. What? Never imagined the little boy whose father died because of you would survive and come back for revenge? Marcus seemed shaken for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. Your father brought that on himself. My father did nothing wrong. Andre suddenly exploded with rage. His voice echoed through the warehouse. Marcus took a deep breath. Whatever happened between your father and me has nothing to do with Naomi. Andre burst into laughter again. Without this woman, how would I ever have discovered that Marcus Langston actually has a weakness? For the first time, Marcus appeared genuinely unsettled. But he also knew that losing his temper now would solve nothing. What do you want? Marcus asked. What will it take for you to let her go? Andre slowly sat back down. Simple. Andre nodded toward one of his men. Immediately, two of the thugs carried over a large plastic container. The sharp smell hit me instantly. Gasoline. Andre rested his elbow on the arm of the chair and spoke casually. Pour this all over yourself and set yourself on fire. Then he pulled a lighter from his pocket and spun it between his fingers. Or I can help you. Marcus looked from me to Andre, then down at the gasoline container. His face was tense. Don't do it. Please don't do it. If you do exactly what they want, you'll die, I screamed inside my head. Tears streamed down my face, but the rag in my mouth prevented even a single word from escaping. Marcus looked at me. For a brief moment, I saw pain in his eyes. Then he reached for the container. Andre could barely hide his excitement. He was smiling so much it looked almost insane. Marcus slowly lifted the gasoline container. As he raised it, his eyes locked onto mine. Then, almost imperceptibly, he glanced toward the warehouse door. Somehow, I understood. Marcus was planning something. Suddenly, Marcus shouted, "Police!" At the same moment, he swung the container and splashed gasoline all over Andre and the men around him. They were caught completely off guard. Gasoline sprayed across their clothes and faces. Chaos erupted instantly. The second everyone panicked, I forced myself to my feet and ran toward the door. But several men suddenly rushed in from outside. Before they could reach me, Marcus charged forward. He kicked one man to the ground, then another. Within seconds, several of them were sprawled across the floor. Marcus grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the exit. Together we ran outside toward a vehicle that was already waiting with the driver's door open. The men inside the warehouse finally recovered from the shock and came rushing after us. They shouted and tried to block our escape, but Marcus shoved me into the passenger seat and jumped behind the wheel. The engine roared to life. The car shot forward while the gang members scrambled to get into another vehicle behind us. What happened next shocked me even more. Marcus spun the steering wheel with the confidence of a professional race car driver. He tilted his head toward me. Hold on! Panic surged through me. I immediately braced my feet against the dashboard to keep myself from being thrown around. My hands were still tied behind my back, so I couldn't fasten the seatbelt. The car weaved around the gang members trying to block the road and burst onto the highway. Behind us, Andre's men climbed into another SUV and gave chase. At that moment, Marcus looked nothing like a 40-something businessman. He looked like a man who had spent his entire life behind the wheel. The speed kept climbing. I struggled to keep my balance as the vehicle accelerated. Seeing my condition, Marcus released one hand from the steering wheel. With one smooth motion, he reached across and pulled the seatbelt over me. At the same time, he ripped the rag from my mouth. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I made you suffer." "I'm okay." The words slipped out before I could stop myself. Marcus looked at me in surprise. To be honest, even I was shocked. Plus, it was the first time I had spoken to him that way. My face immediately grew warm. But there was no time to think about it. The gang's vehicle was still right behind us. By now we were traveling at nearly 120 miles per hour. The highway stretched ahead like an endless ribbon of asphalt. Suddenly, a massive semi-truck emerged from around a curve ahead. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Without warning, he jerked the steering wheel sharply to the right. Our vehicle shot into another lane. Andre's men tried to follow but reacted a fraction too late. The semi-truck blocked their path. Screeching brakes filled the air. The sound of tires grinding against pavement sent chills through my body. When I looked back, the pursuing SUV was forced to stop abruptly to avoid a collision. Within seconds, it disappeared behind the truck. Marcus had successfully lost them. After making sure we were no longer being followed, Marcus drove me home. I wanted to call the police and report the kidnapping, but Marcus stopped me. "Let me handle Andre first," he said. Then, for the first time, he told me the full story. Years ago, Marcus and Richard Hayes, Andre's father, had invested together in a company. The business was successful. Marcus later used his share of the profits to start another company. Richard, however, spent his money on gambling, parties, and reckless living. Eventually, he lost everything, including his original investment. According to Marcus, when the company began struggling, he refused to contribute any money to keep it alive. Instead, he argued that Marcus already owned another successful company and therefore had a responsibility to save the original business as well. Marcus refused because he believed that made no sense. Things only got worse. Richard continued wasting money while ignoring the company's problems. Eventually, the business collapsed completely. Even then, Richard refused to accept responsibility. He demanded money from Marcus. During one heated argument, he threatened to jump to his death if Marcus didn't give him what he wanted. Marcus thought it was only a threat, but Richard actually did it. At the time, Andre had only been 7 years old. I remained silent and let Marcus finish. When he finally brought me home, only Ruth and Victor were there to greet us. I asked where Vanessa was. Ruth immediately explained that after I left from my parents' house, Marcus had told Vanessa she could no longer stay there. According to Ruth, Vanessa had been furious when she left, and had even said that Marcus and I would never be happy together. Before heading downstairs to prepare dinner, Ruth turned back and said softly, "Marcus really loves you, Naomi." Then she left me alone in the room with my thoughts. Marcus had gone to deal with Andre. He said he would make him understand the truth about what happened all those years ago. After seeing Marcus walk into that warehouse alone and risk his life to save me, I believed he could do it. After dinner, Marcus told me to come upstairs because he needed to talk to me. When I entered the room, he handed me a document. I looked down and realized it was a divorce agreement. It had already been signed. "If you can't live with me," Marcus said seriously, "then let's get divorced. I'll set you free." I was surprised by how serious he sounded. I picked up the document and quietly tore it into several pieces. Marcus stared at me in shock. "Did I ever say I wanted a divorce?" I asked. Marcus looked at me with confusion at first. Then realization slowly appeared in his eyes. He sat down beside me. "So, you're agreeing to be my wife for the rest of your life?" Embarrassed. I nodded. Somehow, somewhere along the way, I had fallen in love with my older husband. Marcus gently pressed his lips against mine. The kiss awakened something inside me. It felt as though a current of electricity had run straight through my heart. I stayed silent, feeling my face burn with embarrassment. I wrapped my arms around Marcus's neck. His body was just as warm as mine. It felt as though a fire was consuming both of us. That night, we finally became husband and wife in every sense of the word. Outside, the rain continued falling, but neither of us cared. When I woke up the next morning, Marcus was still holding me tightly in his arms. His eyes remained closed as he breathed steadily beside me. I carefully moved his arm away and tried to get out of bed. My body ached from the night before. As I pulled back the blanket, something caught my attention. There were dark red stains scattered across the white bedsheet. Blood. Where had it come from? I hadn't cut myself. Marcus wasn't injured either. Then where had the blood come from? Panicked, I immediately woke Marcus up. He opened his eyes sleepily. What's wrong? Without answering, I began checking his body for injuries. Marcus looked completely confused. What are you doing? I pointed toward the bloodstains on the bed. I'm not bleeding. You're not bleeding. Then, where did this come from? Marcus followed my finger. Then, to my surprise, he suddenly burst out laughing. I stared at him in confusion. What's so funny? Marcus laughed so hard he could barely speak. You really think I did something to you that night at the hotel? Didn't you? I asked, even more confused than before. Marcus laughed again. If I had actually done what you thought I did, do you really think we'd be seeing blood now? He wrapped an arm around me while still trying to stop laughing. Only then did I realize what he was trying to tell me. My face instantly turned bright red. It turned out my older husband had far more tricks up his sleeve than I ever imagined. If you enjoyed this story and found it interesting, please like the video and subscribe to the channel using the button in the bottom right corner. Your support gives me the motivation to continue bringing you more unforgettable stories in the future.